أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. So welcome to this video. Let me just preface a little bit. We are filming, this channel is called The Knowledge of the 99 Names, and this is the blog that is associated with this particular YouTube channel. And as you can see, we focus on the ilm of the Asma Husna uh, directly from the Quran. So we find all the usages of of a particular ism from the Asma Husna, one of the asma from the 99 asma or names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We find the usages of those names in the Quran, and then after we've gathered every single usage, we look at the pattern of usage, and through that we come to know the full and precise meaning of that name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly from His own kalimat, directly from His own words, directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. We come to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way He made Himself known in His book, right? And so this manhaj of coming to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly through the Quran is the primary, it yields the primary knowledge, the highest knowledge, and the most necessary knowledge. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, um, Allah has 99 names, 100 minus 1, and whoever secures them will enter paradise, or enters paradise, right? So knowing Allah through His asma um, is the key. It is the entire deen. Here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam connects literally the most fundamental, primary, essential, necessary, and highest knowledge, which is the knowledge of the Asmaul Husna, with uh, the ultimate success, which is entering into Jannah. So it's the entire deen is captured in this, right? And what we see is that it's true when we look at names like Ghafurur-Rahim. Uh, often Ghafurur-Rahim is actually used when Allah does the kitabat of something, He prescribes something or He legislates something. He writes something in His book and He tells us that it's prescribed for us or it's legislated upon us, right? He follows it with Ghafurur Rahim. There's other usages but of Ghafurur Rahim, but often that's one of the usages of Ghafurur Rahim. And so what we see is there's a way in which learning the Asma Husna directly from the Quran does teach us the entire deen. And because we focus on the meaning of the zikr of the Asma Husna in a particular set of ayah, we come to actually understand those ayahs much more deeply and profoundly and accurately and precisely, because we're looking for how the asma of Allah that are mentioned in that ayah are manifest in the content of that ayah. So we grasp the meaning of that ayah most fundamentally, fully, accurately, and precisely, right? So this is actually to know the asma of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Quran. This is actually a project that will teach you the entire deen. And as you'll see, the manner in which we do it, it will actually teach you the entire Arabic language, or at least the Quranic Arabic language, which is sufficient to communicate very eloquently in Arabic with people from any Arabic country. But that's not the point. The point is actually to understand the Quran, but understanding the Quranic Arabic and mastering it from the roots up, or down to the roots. um, Actually, you master the language in a way that even modern Arabic speakers don't master it, right? So with all that being said, let's begin. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So how to call upon Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, how to call upon These are just some of the categories for this thing. The title of the video, this particular video, is the Dhikr of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, the best of providers in the Quran, how to call upon the best of providers. Should probably delete one of those, sorry about that. So introduction. So basically, the way this video is going to be conducted, I'm going to be reading the text to you and commenting upon it. And then once I've commentated upon it, usually the next few kind of paragraphs are containing similar content. So I'll read them a little bit faster. I'll just read through them rather than commentating on them. But it's really beneficial because even if you read these articles, I've not only written them, which give writing the articles always produces a deeper understanding than reading the article, and then I've been over it and I've edited it multiple times. I've done other names of Allah this in depth, and other actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran this in depth, the file of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when I commentate upon it, there's always additional insight and additional references and examples and knowledge and wisdom that comes through that isn't that's additional to just what's written. So that's why the videos are also a beneficial resource in addition to just reading the article, which is obviously always faster than listening to someone read and commentate upon it. So let's get started with the introduction. So we all need our needs to be provided for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. None of us have the power of being able to find our rizq on our own if it is not in actuality delivered to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not only Ar-Razaq, the all provider, but He is also Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, the best of providers. Now, see, Razik and Razak are like Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Ar-Razaq and Ar-Razik are like Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman, see the weight of Ar-Rahman, or the wazan, or the, let's say, the pattern of Ar-Rahman and Ar-Razaq is so overwhelming, and it's of the meaning of the pattern is so overwhelming that the specificity of the root meaning is almost it's less present. So Ar-Razaq and Ar-Rahman almost mean the same thing, because Ar-Rahman is the one who has kindness upon everything that has being, and it is his kindness, it's his primary kindness upon everything that has being to bestow its being upon it. It's his kindness upon it that it has being, you know and every quality that it possesses is a kindness from Allah. And then if you look at the name of Ar-Razaq, the all kind versus the all provider, Ar-Razaq is the one who provides for the needs of everything. um, no, it provides for everything, such that even its existence or even its being is provided to it by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the needs or requirements it has in its particular form of being, or its particular mode of being, are also provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, you see there's a slight difference in the meanings from the root, but it's because it's such a extreme and overpowering and overwhelming type of pattern or wazan in the Arabic language. It's almost as if the trilateral roots are less meaningful than the wazan in this particular wazan, right? But when you come to Ar-Rahim and Ar-Raziq, the difference is more apparent. Even in the Quran, if you look at the name Ar-Rahman and its usage, it's a synonym for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's often like, sometimes you'll see that, the Rahmah of Allah is manifest, when Allah is mentioning Ar-Rahman, but usually Allah is mentioning Ar-Rahman in a manner in which, it's really a complete and perfect synonym of Allah, the way Allah uses Ar-Rahman in the Quran. But when you look at Ar-Rahim, Al-Ghafur-ur-Rahim, and other Ar-Rauf-ur-Rahim, At-Tawwab-ur-Rahim, or these different usages of Ar-Rahim in the Quran, and even when Allah says Ar-Rahman-ur-Rahim, that's when the Rahmah of Allah, as in like compassion or kindness, is more manifest in what is being talked about than when only Ar-Rahman is being talked about, right? So here, when Allah, so all that is, see, like that's the additional insight I was talking about. All that is, so to say, when Allah says He's Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, what that means is Ar-Razaq is the all provider, right? But Ar-Raziq is the one who provides specifically for someone specifically due to their virtue. It's someone like he's providing for someone in particular for a particular reason, right? For a particular motive is Ar-Razik. Like Ar-Rahim has compassion upon the Mominin. Ar-Rahim has compassion upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ar-Rahim has compassion for Musa alayhi salam, right? But he doesn't. It's not like Ar-Rahim has compassion for Firaun. Yeah, Ar-Rahim doesn't have Rahim upon Firaun, right? Ar-Rahman has Rahim upon Firaun, but Ar-Rahim doesn't have Rahim upon Firaun. So Ar-Razaq provides for Firaun, but Ar-Razik provides for Musa alayhi salam. Razik is choiceful, right? And so you know, you look at, but here Allah doesn't mention the name Razik in the Quran explicitly, at least not that I have found so far. But what He does is He mentions His other name, Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, the best of providers. But here, provider is an all provider, not because there's only one all provider. So there's actually no like Urhumun Rahimin. There can be multiple Rahims, but there can't be multiple Rahmans. There's only a Rahman, right? And in the same way, there's only one Ar-Razaq, but there can be multiple Raziqin, right? So there's multiple Raziqin, and so He is the best of the Raziqin. He's Khair-ur-Raziqin. He's the best of providers, right? And this khair, it's actually, we'll see this pattern. Let me preface and give it to you up front, and you'll also see it as we go through. Is Khair-ur-Raziqin not only provides the best risk, he not only provides the best risk, but he also provides it to the best people, right? So you'll see that the people who are mentioned who are receiving the risk from Khairul Raziqin are actually the best people. And of course, the most obvious example of this is Khairul Raziqin provides for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that should be an indication. We'll see that usage in the Quran. So Khairul Raziqin is providing for the best of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ar-Raziq provides for the servants of Allah unselectively amongst the Mominin, or the Abids of Allah, or the Muttaqin, unselectively for each one. But the best of provider provides the best risk for the best people. And we'll see that pattern as we go through, and I've seen it as I've gone through it in the past and written this. So it's Ar-Razaq is on the same wazn as Ar-Rahman, and you have read the Dhikr of Ar-Rahman in the Quran, then you know that this wazn is so broad and all comprehensive in its meaning, it barely allows the specificity of meaning from the trilateral root. Therefore, Ar-Razaq is the one who provides for all everything that each thing possesses, such that nothing exists whose existence is not fully provided by the provider. However, Ar-Razik is on the wazn of Ar-Rahim, the compassionate. This is where we see the specificity of the meaning derived from the root Ra, Za, Qaf, more manifest, or most manifest. Right? So obviously this part was in the commentary that I just read. I commentated upon it already. Therefore, like those seeking to be better acquainted with the Rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and thus finding the Dhikr of Ar-Rahim in the Quran rather than Ar-Rahman, those seeking to be better acquainted with the providence or provision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or better advice to seek the Dhikr of Raziq or Khair-ur-Raziqin. This is basically saying, if you want to understand the concept of Rahmah, or the Izhar of Rahmah, or the manifestation and display of Rahmah in the Quran, then you have to look for the Dhikr of Ar-Rahim, not for the Dhikr of Ar-Rahman. The way Ar-Rahman is used in the Quran, you won't really understand the concept of Rahmah from looking it up. Maybe you will, but not really. It's really used as a perfect synonym for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And wherever Allah is used in the Quran, in similar places Allah will, instead of using Allah, then use Ar-Rahman. Really, in the Quran, the main purpose you can see of the usage of Rahman is to establish the equation of Ar-Rahman equals Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like fully, completely, perfectly, without any, it's exactly like a perfect identity, a perfect synonym. And that's the way Rahman is used in the Quran. And when I go, I think I published it already, or when I publish it, or and I do a video like this for Rahman, you'll see that. But when Allah mentions Ar-Rahim, you can go through and you can see that the Rahma, or kindness or compassion, is manifest when Allah is talking about Ar-Raziq in the Ar-Rahim in the Quran, right? So in the same way, if you want to understand the idea of risk, you have to look for the mention of Razik or Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. Uh, if you look for the risk of, if you look at Ar-Razaq, there's only one zikr of Ar-Razaq to begin with, so it's impossible to get a perfectly clear, precise understanding. But it's Allah does a good job to communicate it there. But if you really want to understand the idea of risk, you really have to look at the idea. You have to look for Kheyr-ur-Raziqin or Ar-Raziq to get repeated examples and repeated usages. And you actually have to look at risk as a noun in the Quran, and razaqna as a verb in the Quran, to get a good idea, of what risk is, rather than looking for a razaq. Uh, I won't say much more about the meaning of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. Let's allow the Quran to speak for itself. Let's acquire knowledge of this one of the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. So obviously I've written this, so I've given you a summary up front, or some of the patterns up front, because I've recognized them through doing this, through writing this. But now we're actually going to allow the Quran to speak for itself. So this is the first zikr of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in the Quran, Surah Al-Ma'idah 5:114. Kheyr-ur-Raziqin provides a table spread from the heavens. In Ayah 5:114, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is quoting Isa ibn Maryam as saying, O Allah, our Lord, send down upon us a table spread from the heavens, to be for us a holy day, for the first of us and the last of us, and a sign from you, and provide us, you are the best of providers. So first notice that Isa al-Islam is calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a miracle as a sign from him, and that the day of this miracle becomes a holy day for the first and last of his followers. And then he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide for them, and praises him as the best of providers. Right? So look at what Isa al-Islam is asking for. Right? Isa al-Islam is asking for a table spread, like a table spread, and not only a physical table, but a table spread, like with food, with delicious, just like a feast, like of beautiful food from the heavens, like you know, the most luxurious food from the heavens itself, from maybe from Jannah or something, to descend directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for him and his followers to eat. So think about this. There's this modern idea of something being extra. Think about how extra this is. Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send a table full of food, so they can feast, right? And this is what Isa alayhi Islam is asking for. And alhamdulillah, mashallah, Isa alayhi Islam is given that rutbah. This is something he can ask for. And also, it's not him asking for it, really, it's his followers are asking for it from a place, like as a ayah, as a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so it's not Isa alayhi Islam asking for it, but think about that this was done for Isa alayhi Islam. So this is what he's asking for, and this is when he uses the name Kheyr-ur-Raziqin to call upon Allah. And thinking about who is the one calling upon Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, Isa al-Islam. We'll see a pattern of who calls upon Kheyr-ur-Raziqin also in the Quran. So the stories of the Anbiya and the Quran are provided so that we can see the events of their lives in a clear context and be guided by imitating their example. So here, when Isa al-Islam wants miraculous providence for his followers to descend from the heavens, he calls upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the name. We should imitate his example. But this descent of a table spread from the heavens is a specific and particular instance of the phenomena of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowing rahmah from Himself, or providing for who He wills without measure. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acting upon the world directly without means in order to deliver a good to His worshipper. There are countless mentions of this phenomena in the Qur'an, which we will explore in depth in future word studies. Okay. Surah Al-Hajj 58, 22-58, the second dhikr of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in the Quran. Kheyr-ur-Raziqin provides those who die after immigrating with rizqun hasana. So in Ayah 22:58, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is conveying good news of providing for those who migrated in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then were killed or died. A rizqan hasanan. He says, those that migrate in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and are killed or die, provide for them will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provision most beautiful. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, the best of providers. First, notice how different the two contexts of usages are, meaning the first zikr in which Isa al-Islam receives it and makes dua for the table from the heavens, and this one where someone migrates and dies and is provided with uh, khair, rizqun hasanan after they're dead. Finding the hidden commonality of meaning connotated by the term, despite the contrasting context of usage, will give us immense insight into this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about providing a provision most beautiful for those who have died. And in this provision, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that His being Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is manifest. Right? So in the providing of rizqun hasana to those who have died after making hijrah, the name Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is manifest. Why? Because He's providing for the best of people, people who migrate in the way of Allah, uh, then they die or are killed. Uh, Once, as a consequence of having migrated, you know, uh, they die or are killed, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide a rizqan hasana, like the most absolutely good and absolutely beautiful rizq that is possible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for them. So it's the best of people being provided with the best of rizq. So this is the manifestation of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. Ha-Sin-Nin, Ha-Sin-Nun is the root of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the root Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to attribute a quality to His own names, Asma'ul Husna. Therefore, the root Ha-Sin-Nin, Nun, is used in the Quran or Sunnah. There is a connotation of absolute goodness and perfect beauty. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attributes this quality to the rizq. He will provide for those who killed or died, who were killed or died after migrating in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we can infer this rizq refers to the blessed existence that is provided for them after death, and that will be provided for them on the day of judgment, and what will be provided for them in Jannah after the day of judgment. And in this providence for those who die after migrating in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is manifest. Now the question is, what is the meaning of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, such that this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is manifest both in the descent of a table of food from the heavens as a sign and the providence of those who die after migration. So basically, I'm asking a rhetorical question here. What is the meaning, what is the precise meaning of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, such that it is manifest both in the table spread of food descending from the heavens in response to the dua of Isa al-Islam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala providing rizqun hasana for those who migrate and then are died or killed, um, you know, uh, after they're dead. The khairur is providing. What is the common meaning of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in both of these? And of course, we're only on the second usage, but already we see such a contrast of usage and contrast of context of the usage that's interesting to discuss this point here before we move on to future adhkar of this same name, Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, in the Quran, that will, of course, further clarify it and answer this question. But just due to the sheer contrast of the two contexts of usage already, it's interesting to discuss this point here as well. Now, the question is, I've already, the answer requires a detailed explanation. Isa al-Islam is born of a virgin. He is the only Nabi who is purely a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the way that Adam al-Islam was purely a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only other Nabi, right? Every other Nabi received the salam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or had their heart washed as prerequisite to Nabuwa after they were born. Meaning, like every prophet in in ever, right? Every Nabi after Adam al-Islam, it can be Idris al-Islam or Nuh al-Islam from the early generations, or it can be Isa al-Islam or Muhammad, no, it can be Yahya al-Islam or Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the later generations, right? So let's not say Yahya al-Islam, it could be Ibrahim al-Islam or Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the later generations. So um, all these anbiya other than Adam al-Islam and Isa al-Islam are born, to a father who is imperfect. They're all born to a father who is not salim. Now there's exceptions to this, right? Ibrahim al-Islam was a nabi, and then he had Isaac and Ishmael al-Islam. So Ishaq and Ishmael al-Islam are fathered, right? They're fathered by a prophet after he's a prophet. So they're fathered by a perfected man, right? So there's exceptions to this, and yeah, the reason I didn't want to say Yahya al-Islam, he may also be an exception of a certain kind. There's more to discuss there, but you see, there's exceptions. But let's take Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't have any anbiya in his lineage. Between him and Ishmael al-Islam, Ishmael al-Islam was a nabi, and then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a nabi. But every patriarch, or every father and father's father and father's father's father that came between Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ishmael al Islam, all of them, right? All of them were ghair Nabi. So none of them were Salim, and directly the father of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Abdullah, um, his name was, he was not a Nabi, right? So if someone who is not a Nabi, and therefore the khata of Adam, see, the khata of Adam is present, right? And the khata of the fathers, because if you have a chain of 10 or 15 ghair Nabi, ghair Salim, imperfect people fathering, what happens is you are an act of your father, right? You are an act of your father. Your father begot you, right? So as an act of your father, and your father being imperfect and human and errorful or erring, to whatever degree there's erring in him, there's khata in you by birth. There's khata in you by birth, right? And this is also represented when we say there's a black thread of Adam, black thread of Iblis in every heart of Bani Adam after Adam Islam's falling. But then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this thread was taken out and his heart was washed with Zamzam. Why was it necessary to wash the heart of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam with Zamzam? Why was that necessary? Because he was born a natural birth. The heart of Isa al-Islam was not washed with Zamzam, right? He was born of a virgin as an act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just the way Adam al-Islam was perfect and in a state of grace before the fall of Adam al-Islam, in the same way Isa al-Islam is in a state of grace, right? The malaika are in a state of sajda to him, the Ruh Qudus is supporting him, so Isa al-Islam is in that state. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like all the anbiya, only enters that state of grace when Allah makes him Nabi and makes him Rasul. Once he is Nabi and Rasul and the salam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends upon him and his heart has been washed with Zamzam, then he enters the state that Isa al-Islam is born with, that Adam al-Islam was born with and had before he fell. Right? That's salam. So uh, Every other Nabi received the salam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or had their heart washed as a prerequisite to Nabuwa after they were born. Isa al-Islam was born innocent or masum and in a state of grace. Therefore, despite living in a fallen world, he is in the same state that Adam al-Islam was in Jannah. And when the Malaika made sajda to him, therefore, when he asked for a table to descend from the heavens, he is asking for the heavenly state of grace to encompass his companions. Therefore, when he asked for a table uh, to descend from the heavens, he is asking for the heavenly state of grace to encompass his companions. This is the same heavenly state that those killed after migrating will enter into after their death, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides them with rizqun hasanan. So there's a few places in the Quran where the state of grace is re-manifest in the world, right? So what that means is where Musa al-Islam, the burning bush, in the burning bush, this is the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Zaytun coming from that place. This is the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like in Makkah, right? In Makkah, or Allah's Jannatul Baqi in Medina, right? They're places where the presence of Allah is so strong and so complete that He is being manifested very strongly in that place. And Jannah is just a place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfectly manifest in the zahir, in the living things, in the plants, in the roses, in the gardens, in the greenery, in the river, in the water, in the people. Allah is just very present and manifest and zahir. This is Jannah. This is Jannah. And so there are occasions in the Quran and in biblical history or prophetic history, let's say, that Allah He makes Himself manifest in the same way He was in Jannah in particular places. The burning bush is a good example, and there's various examples like this where Allah is making Himself manifest on a place on earth. The Kaaba is a good example. Anyways, so this is an instance when Isa al-Islam calls upon Allah to have this table descend and for his companions to eat. It's one of those occasions where Allah is going to make Himself very, very present in the world in a particular environment and just be very, very manifest in the people, in the food, in the table itself. Because we have to know that the table was probably beautiful too. The table was or made of a scented wood, or there it was probably very, the presence of Allah was in the table itself, and I'm sure there was utensils and so. So we have to see, and the house was blessed, and that wherever that table did descend, the heavens ripped open, and the table descended from the sky, like wherever that happened, was very blessed due to the presence of Allah at that place, you know. And then, in the same way, when Allah is providing rizqun hasanan, this absolutely good, perfectly beautiful rizq to the people in the grave, and then on Judgment Day and in Jannah, right? This rizq, it is the same thing where Allah is very, very manifest in the one He's providing to, and in what He is providing, and the quality of the provision, right? He's just very, very manifest. And therefore, whenever you have this root hasin noon, that is used for asma al husna, or rizqun hasana, or karzun hasana, or wherever you see hasana, that indicates like an absolute goodness, perfect beauty, and like the very intense and maybe perfect presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that thing, is what ha seen noon indicates when it's used in the Quran. Therefore, Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is manifest when what is provided for is perfect goodness and absolute beauty, purified, devoid of any imperfections. And of course, when some Zahiri thing is devoid of any imperfections, the way it was in the Jannah that Allah created for Adam al-Islam, and in the Jannah that we will enter at some point, inshaAllah, that Jannah, uh, the way He is only Allah being really, really Zahir, perfectly zahir in something, can mean it has no flaws. Because if Allah is not perfectly zahir in something, then it will have flaws. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfectly zahir in something, it will have no flaws and imperfections. So this is the third dhikr of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. In the Qur'an, uh, provides Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, um, the Kheyr-ur-Raziqin provides Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam with his reward for the da'wah. In ayah 2372, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, or ask you reward. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being asked a rhetorical question by Allah. Allah is asking a rhetorical question of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or ask you reward. Do you ask them for reward? But the reward of your Lord is best. He is the best of providers. So tas'aluhum, do you ask him jaza'an, reward? fa jaza uh, what is this? فخرجوا uh, فخرجوا ربك. Isn't this jaza? What happened to the jeen? Kharajan wa kharaju rabbika, but the this is actually expenditure. Um, I was thinking this was jaza for some reason. So okay, do you ask them for expenditure? Is really kharajan or fa kharaju, but the expenditure from your Lord is best, or maybe reward is a good one. But this is about, in other places this is jaza. I'm a little confused as to what happened in my translation. Okay, anyway, khayrun wa huwa khayrul raziqin. So the reward of your Lord is best. He is the best provider. Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. Okay, here again, pay attention to the absolute nature, perfect goodness, absolute presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and flawless beauty of what is being provided in the absolute presence of Allah in what is being provided, and its flawless, and therefore its flawless beauty. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is manifest in his reward for Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself. So think about this. The Here the name Khairul Raziqin is manifest in that which is going to be provided to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. So that gives you a sense of, you know, who Khairul Raziqin is. What is the meaning of Khairul Raziqin? So far, Kheyr-ur-Raziqin has been manifest in sending a table spread from the heavens as a sign and providence for the followers of Isa al-Islam, in the rizqun hasana of those who die after immigrating, and now the reward of his Lord for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. One pattern which was evident from the first two mentioned of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, but is made perfectly clear with the third, is the specificity of Ar-Raziq over the generality of Ar-Razaq. So we talked about this in the beginning, in the introduction, but here I'm going to go into more details about it. But okay, let me read this as again. One pattern which was evident for the first two mentions, through the first two mentions of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, but is made perfectly clear with the third, is the specificity of Ar-Raziq over the generality of Ar-Razaq. Just like the Rahmah of Rahman is so fully upon everything, bestowing being upon it that it is difficult to discern and differentiate the quality of Rahmah, so the Razaka of Ar-Razaq is so fully for everything that is difficult to discern and differentiate the specific quality of Razqa. However, in contrast, just like the Rahmah of Ar-Rahim is specifically upon the faithful in very particular ways, so the Razqa of Ar-Raziq, or Khair-ur-Raziqin rather, is upon the faithful in very particular ways. The difference wasn't between Ar-Rahim and Khair-ur-Raziqin, is that the Khair adds an absolute goodness and perfect beauty to that which is being provided. This and also in a fuller presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in what is being provided. This absoluteness or perfection is not present in the Rahmah of Ar-Rahim, though it is present in the Rahmah of Ar-Rahman, Arhamun Rahimin. Okay, so the other difference in usage between Ar-Rahim and Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is that Khair shows a certain selectivity for whom the name manifests in relationship to and at what event. So Ar-Rahim is also selective. It's exclusive to the Mominin, or the moral people, right? But Khairul Raziqin is even more selective. It's not specific to just the Mominin, even though it is like to the best of the Mominin, like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like Isa alayhi salam, like the people who make hijrah and then die or are killed once they make hijrah and therefore shaheed. Shows a certain selectivity even more beyond Ar-Rahim, for whom the name manifests in relationship to and at what event. Isa and his Havariyun, Jesus and his apostles, at an event became at an event that became an Eid for all his followers. Remember that an Eid is divinely sanctioned celebration of the greatest rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon an ummah or a millat. So we celebrate, Ibrahim al-Islam and had the imamat with Ibrahim al-Islam at what we call in Urdu Bakra Eid, the big Eid, the big Eid, which is 2.5 months after Ramzan, or the Eid of Ramzan. We celebrate the big event that Ibrahim al-Islam was willing to sacrifice Ismail al-Islam, and therefore the promise, right? The promise of Isa al-Islam, or the promise of the covenant of priesthood was made between Allah and Zurriyat Ibrahim, which culminated with the Ba'ath of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Greatest rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the ummah. So that's the event we celebrate. And not because it was a specific rahmah upon our ummah, even though it was, with the coming of Muhammad, because that's where the coming of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is initiated basically in history. That's where like it becomes destiny that that's going to happen. But uh, it's because it's the greatest rahmah upon the millat of Ibrahim that the covenant of priesthood was made with them, or with us as the Sayyids and the Quraysh and Al Ibrahim. It was made with us. So that covenant of priesthood that was made, as a reward for the willingness to make the sacrifice of the ram, is like is the greatest rahmah upon us. So the greatest rahmah upon the millat of Isa al-Islam, or the ummah of Isa al-Islam rather, the Havariyun of Isa al-Islam, was this event where a table laden with food descended upon Isa al-Islam and the apostles from the heavens, and they ate from it. Right, they ate from this heavenly food, and so this became an Eid. It became a holy day for the Christians, or for the Nazarenes, let's say. Um, the reward full of perfect goodness given to those who die after emigration, including martyrs, and the reward of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself. These acts of providence are the greatest of the great. It would be inappropriate to make the comparison, but the collected mentions of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in the Quran are like the greatest hits of Allah providing risk. Right? So Allah is continuously as Ar-Razaq, right? He's continuously providing for all, and He's continuously providing for everything that is in existence, continuously, right? But every occasionalist act of provision, right? Every razaqna from Allah, every act of provision from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is specific and individual, right? Each moment He's providing something to each thing that continues to exist, from the last moment to this moment. And so He's providing continuously. Each one is a specific action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the greatest acts of razaqna, the greatest acts of provision, the greatest acts of providing risk to any creation that has ever existed, right? Uh, in all of creation. So this is kind of like the uses of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in the Quran. It's the greatest hits of Allah's rizq. And we're talking about almost, not almost, but like something that's countless for us. We cannot possibly count uh, every single act of provision that Allah has enacted throughout history and throughout eternity and throughout time and throughout forever. We can't even begin to encompass it, right? And from those, Allah has selected, I think seven. No, four, no, five. Sorry, He selected five to as like the greatest hits, like five out of infinity acts. So out of infinite acts of providence or provision, Allah has chosen five to associate with the name Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. You understand? So these are literally the highest acts of provision that Allah has ever enacted. And so this is the meaning of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. So let's keep going. Surah Sabah, ayah 39, Quran 34, 39, the fourth dhikr of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in the Quran. Kheyr-ur-Raziqin has a sunnah of replacing anything you spend in his cause. So this ayah occurs with a long dialogue with the kuffar, uh, within a long dialogue with the kuffar in Surah Sabah. This command to say is one of many in the dialogue. So basically, there's a back and forth happening with the kuffar, and Allah is giving us quotes to say to them. He's saying, say this and say that. So this command to say is one of many then in the dialogue. So there's many times Allah says in the dialogue for us to say this to the kuffar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks in some ayah, and in some He commands us to say. So in some of the ayah, Allah is directly addressing the kuffar, or at least He is speaking in His voice. And in other times He begins the ayah with qul, and He says, say this to them, right? Like this ayah we're looking at. And in some ayah he quotes the kuffar. So also it's not like he's just saying address the kuffar with this, address the kuffar with this. He's also like he's quoting them also. Right, this is what they're going to say, or this is what they say, and so say this back to them, or he addresses them directly, or speaks about them, like the, and more specifically, the wealthy of every city he sent messengers to. So he's also he's not talking specifically about a particular set of kuffar. He's actually talking about the wealthy of many cities. So the rich and powerful of many cities that he has sent messengers to. So it's like kind of an archetype that he's addressing. The rich and powerful of many of the cities that he sent prophets and messengers to, this is the same thing they say. And we can imagine in the course of divine history, because I have this experience. Sometimes I read the Quran, and Ibrahim al-Islam is having the same conversation with his father that I just finished having with my father. And so it's like we do have this situation where like the same exact conversations do occur between the kuffar and the mominin throughout the history. So this is like an archetype of the rich and powerful of the people whom God has sent messengers to, but we can also imagine that they have said identical things in conversation with the mominin uh, of many different peoples. So let's keep going. However, this ayah for our purposes can be looked at in isolation, so we don't really have to look at the whole dialogue to understand this. In ayah 30, at least not to understand the uses of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in the ayah. In ayah 34, 39, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to say, my Lord extends provision to whom He wants from amongst His slaves, and restricts for him whom He wills. But what you spend in His cause of anything, He will replace it, and He is the best of providers. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being commanded to say something, and what he's being commanded to say is actually the habit of Allah, or the behavior of Allah is really the best way to say it, but it sounds odd. Is my Lord extends provision to whom He wants. So Allah gives provisions, He extends it to whomever He wants. And this idea of extension is really closely related to extending risk, is closely related to Zu'ul Quwat al Mateen. Ar-Razaq is Zu'ul Quwat al Mateen. And so this idea of extending risk, قُلْ إِنَّ رَبِّي يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ قُلْ إِنَّ رَبِّي يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ قُلْ إِنَّ رَبِّي يُبْسَطُ الرِّزْقَ. This yubsatu, this yabsutu is very closely related to Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. I mean, this yubsatu is really close related to the idea of Zu al al Mateen. And Ar-Razaq is, Allah says in the Quran, Ar-Razaq Zu al Mateen. So, Allah also, Lahu Allahi ul Asma, uh, Huwa Allahi Lahu ul Asma ul Husna. So he says for Allah, or the Asma ul Husna. So here, and then he says in another place, so here is he attributing Asma ul Husna to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in other places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, uh, Ar-Razaq Zu'ul Quwwat al-Mateen. So now he's attributing a quality or a name to the name Ar-Razaq, right? And Ar-Razaq is the owner of Al-Quwwat al-Mateen. And he never uses this idea of Al-Quwwat al-Mateen. He never uses this idea of Al-Quwwat al-Mateen, right? He never uses this with other names or in other places. Really, I haven't seen it elsewhere in the Quran, this exact phrase. And so Ar-Razaq, why he uses this attribution to Ar-Razaq is because it takes he is the one who can actually deliver risk. We can try to get risk, right? We can try to use sabab and wasail to get to the risk, but we can only try. We can use every sabab and try in every possible way and struggle and work hard, but only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can actually deliver to risk to us. It takes a perfect power. It takes a firm, perfect power to deliver the risk to someone, you know. And so this yupsitu, and Allah, when he exercises that power, he delivers the risk from himself to the person who receives the risk, who receives the sustenance. And so this idea of yupsutu or rizqa is when Allah is exercising that power, he's actually, what he's doing, he's extending that risk from himself to the person who receives it, right? So Rabbi yubsitu rizqa, he extends it. It's literally like this. You can imagine like a person reaching out and giving a piece of bread to someone, right? You're extending your arm, so you're extending food, so you're extending risk to someone, right? That's kind of the verbal or wordly metaphor that's in there. You're literally extending your hand out to provide risk. So it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extends risk to whom he wants. This isn't just some random word. That's like the linguistic metaphor that's in there. To extend risk means you can imagine someone extending their arm to give someone a piece of bread, right? It's literally like that's what's being communicated. Whom wants from amongst his slaves and ricks it. But what you spend in his cause of anything, he will replace it, and he is the best of providers, Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, is manifest in his replacement of anything that is spent in his cause by the Mominin. Here the sunnah of replacing what is spent in his cause does not necessarily mean in this world, but it means that it will ultimately be replaced. But of course here Allah is not one to deceive, right? So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that my sunnah is that if you spend something fi sabilillah, then I will replace it. الرزق لمن يشاء من عباده ويقدر له وما أنفقتم من شيء وهو يخلفه وهو خير الرازقين. Um, so when you spend anything in his cause, he will replace it. So Allah is not one to deceive. What He's saying, yes, if you spend it, I will replace it for you. You won't run out of risk. Is what the reassurance is being given, and it's kind of like I forgot what it's called, but it's like double speak. Like when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Hazrat Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu were on the hijrah, they encountered a caravan uh, who knew Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, but didn't know Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so they asked Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and they were friendly. I mean, they weren't hostile. They probably didn't even have news that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had run away from Makkah or anything. They're friendly to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, so they're obviously decent people. But still, you don't want to go about spreading news. You're hiding on the hijrah, on the journey. You don't want to tell them who this person is. So they ask Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who is this person with you? And so Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu says, he is my guide, guiding me to the way. So I forgot what that's called, but it's like a double speak, meaning it's like you're saying something which is true in its literal meaning, but it also has another meaning which is true, which is really what is truer. Like it has a literal meaning that's true, that you know that the person you're speaking to will take, and there's another meaning which is truer, which you actually intend. You know, but the reason you phrase the thing, you phrase the meaning, phrase that meaning that way, or you say the words the way you say them, is so that the person will take the less true meaning of the words, and you will know the more true meaning of the words, right? um, I keep forgetting what that's called, but it's a beautiful idea. And so Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu does that. Of course, he means like he's my guide, as in like I'm unfamiliar with. He's guiding me to the road, right? He's showing me the way somewhere I'm going. But actually, what he means, he's guiding me in terms of Islam, and in terms of Deen, and in terms of Akhirah, or in terms of Hidayah through the dunya, or his way. Anyways, um, so here it's like that. This ayah is speaking that way, where Allah is reassuring their hearts, like you spending in infaq, in anything in the place of Allah. Allah won't put you, when you do that, Allah won't put you in a position where you don't have anything, you go hungry, or like, he won't do that. Like, you're spending in his way. Maybe it's possible you might have a difficult month or something, but he won't make it so that you regret spending in his way, right? He's not going to make you regret what you spend in his way. Like, he will replace it. You're not going to run out of risk. Allah doesn't need your risk. Allah doesn't need your infaq. It is an act of ibadah to make the infaq. It is an act of ibadah, and you're only spending out of what Allah has provided you with, and He will provide. He will replace what you spend. Right? So there's definitely a worldly connotation to it, right? There's definitely a worldly connotation. It's not like trying to say that, oh yeah, whatever you spend, you're still gonna have to go get it. You're gonna run out of money, and then you're still gonna have to go. You're gonna have to re-earn the money, and Allah will ultimately replace it in Jannah. That's not what's being said, right? What's being said is that Allah will replace what you spend. It's an act of ibadah. He provided what you're spending from, and He will provide whatever you need in the future. He'll give it to you. What's not being promised here is that you won't run out of the money and have a difficult month or two. But what's being said is ultimately, it's you're not going to starve to death because you spent in the way of Allah. Allah is going to replace. So there is a reassurance in the worldly sense, but there's also that double speak that ultimately it will be replaced by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Jannah. Like the ultimate recompensation for every penny, or the inside of a date seed, that the little fiber on the date seed. Anything that you spend, a penny that you spend, or pence that you spend in the cause of Allah, Allah will ultimately replace it in Jannah. That's the double meaning. That's the truer meaning, right? That's the truer meaning. But the worldly reassurance is also there, and both are true, and both are intended by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here. Further, because the motive of this speech is to motivate the Mominin to spend in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace what is spent with is meant to reassure them in the spending. The use of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin here also implies that by spending in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we take Kheyr-ur-Raziqin as our Raziq, and He is the best Raziq, and the best Raziq it is possible to have. So this reassurance, Inna Allaha huwa Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. Inna Allaha huwa Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. Saying this after communicating the sunnah that Allah will replace what you spend in His cause, anything, you know, saying this that Allah will replace it is meant to reassure their hearts so that they can spend. And it's communicating a sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So more primarily, it's giving us knowledge of Allah, and not just knowledge, giving us experience of Allah. So when we spend in the cause of Allah and then Allah replaces it while we're alive, we get to experience Allah. We not only know Him, know His sunnah, we experience His sunnah in relationship to us, right? Um, And so after that knowledge of the sunnah is being communicated, then the knowledge of Allah, or explicating that inna Allah inna huwa ul khairur raziqin, saying that here, it's almost like it would seem like a non sequitur, but what is being communicated is that, you know, He will replace whatever you spend in His cause. In that replacing, in that replacing or in that extending of risk to you, uh, or in that extending, you know, when Allah says yubsitu rizqa, what it means, that 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 extension of risk, you know, that extending out the bread, or the extending out of risk to you from Himself, uh, to whom He wills. And then that saying, He's saying that he does that for whom He wants. And then when he communicates the sunnah that he replaces the risk, that you spend in His cause. That is an example of Him. That is the situation in which He wants to extend risk to you, right? So first, Allah is saying He does what He wants. Allah is saying He extends risk to whom He wants, and then He's saying that He wants to, he does, he replaces risk that you spend in His cause. So what's being said is that Allah wants to extend risk to those who spend in His cause, and in the manner in which He extends risk to those who spend in His cause, He is Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. So what happens is, when we spend in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His sunnah is that He wants to extend risk to us and replace what we have spent. It doesn't say with an equal amount. He says He will. So He wants to compensate us, but you know, Allah is generous, so He wants to compensate us, but not like one to one. You know, He wants to extend risk to us when we spend in His way. And what He's saying is that in this extension of risk, in the sunnah, in wanting to replace what we have, and having the sunnah of actually replacing what we have spent in His way, He is Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. So when we spend in His way, we have risk extended to us, and it is the risk that is extended not by Ar-Razaq, but the risk that is extended by Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. So the risk that is extended by Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is like the risk that is extended to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as ajr for his dawah, right? Is like the risk extended to the shuhada who have made hijrah and then die for their shahada, uh, uh, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the riskun hasana that is extended to them, right? And it's like the risk that was given to Isa al-Islam in the descent of a table laden with food from the heavens for him and his followers. It is like that risk, right? That is the type of risk that we receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we spend in His way, when we spend in His way, and He extends risk to us because He wants to replace the risk we have spent in His way, that risk, when we receive that risk after spending in His way, it is the type of risk that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for the martyrs, to the shuhada, for the muhajirun who die after migrating, for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself as a reward for his dawah, for Isa al-Islam's followers with a table full of food from Jannah, from himself, min ladunka, from himself it comes down. This is the type of risk that Allah replaces the risk that we spend in His way with. There's also one last rhetorical note. Moving beyond this point that I've spent too much time on repeating and articulating is difficult. Sometimes in the Quran it's like you're contemplating it as you're teaching it. But there's let me move on from this. Let's keep reading. Further, because the motive of the speech is to motivate the moment to spend in the cause of Allah. I read that. Uh, Lastly, the first section of this ayah is that my Lord extends provision to whom He wants and restricts it. This sentence affirms the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to deliver risk or to withhold it. Then when the sunnah of Him replacing anything spent in His cause is mentioned, His deliverance of risk is guaranteed. So what it is that one is the first part of the ayah is expressing that Allah is completely free to give the risk to whom He wants and to withhold it from whom He wants. And then the second segment of the sunnah is expressing His sunnah of whom He wants to extend risk to, and its opposite is kind of implied of whom He doesn't want to extend risk to, but not necessarily. It's just telling us one of the type of people that He wants to extend risk to, right? And so we are invited by that information to enact spending in His cause, and thus become one of the people who Allah wants to extend risk to, and thus us receiving risk becomes guaranteed. Right? So this is the primary benefit, one of the primary benefits of learning the ilm of Allah and the Asma al-Husna, is we also learn the sunan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and thus we learn that by acting in particular ways, we are guaranteed certain benefits by the nature of Allah, by the fitrah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. Right? But fitrah is not appropriate for Allah, because fitrah means origin, right? It means origin, and Allah doesn't have an origin, right? So when we say nature in English, that is applicable, and fitra and nature are good translations for one another. But fitra, because it has the real root implication of origin, it's not appropriate for Allah. Allah is al-fatir, but Allah doesn't have a fitra Himself, right? Uh, Anyways. And then the sunnah of this guaranteed risk as replacement for what has been spent in His cause, being Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, His manifest. Now, in this ayah, we cannot directly glimpse the perfect goodness or absolute beauty of the risk that will replace what is spent, except in three ways. So, we've seen so far, the ajr of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a table descending from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've seen the perfect goodness, the absolute beauty, the presence of Allah in what He's providing with the Hasin Noon root, very clearly and very obviously. Here it's a little more implicit, but we can glimpse it in three ways, and it becomes pretty evident through the three ways. So let me talk about those three ways. First, the one who will provide is not Ar-Razaq or Ar-Raziq, but Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. So because the name Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is used, through our knowledge of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin and what it means and when it's used in the Quran, we know that because the one who is providing is Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, not Ar-Raziq, not Ar-Razaq, it's Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. So what He's going to provide is going to be beautiful. So we can also, when we listen to Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, especially those of us who know Urdu, it's easy to take kind of like an ambiguous meaning or the wrong meaning. So, for example, before I studied this name, my conception of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is he's the most reliable Raziqin. He's the most reliable provider. But of course, Allah, anything He is, He's reliably that. So this idea that Allah is reliably the best provider, that we can count on Him. We can always count on Allah in every one of His sifat, right? But here, that's the wrong meaning. Really, what Khairul Raziqin is implying is that He provides the best thing, right? Like when Allah, what Khairul Raziqin, like this is giving you a modern kind of funny example, is Allah Khairul, Ar-Razaq might give you tennis shoes, and they might be from Wal Mart, you know, but Khairul Raziqin is going to give you Nikes, and he's going to give you the most technologically advanced Nikes. You know, Khairul Raziqin. That's just a metaphor, and it's kind of like funny. It's kind of like a joke. It's a little bit humor, but it gives you the sense. It gives you the idea, right? Khairul Raziqin provides the best. It's not saying that when you need tennis shoes, Allah will provide you with the cheapest tennis shoes that will fulfill your needs. you know like, okay, sometimes you don't need the Nikes. Sometimes, a certain budget Reebok will do the job. So maybe Ar-Razaq might provide that. But Khairul Raziqin won't provide what you need, but he will provide the best and most beautiful form of what you need. Say you need clothes. Okay, you're wearing a thobe and the thobe gets ripped, and you're you're in Saudi Arabia, but you're usually from the US. So all your clothes are like pants and shirts, and you don't feel appropriate or proper praying in the haram in in jeans and a t-shirt. And so you need a thobe. So you call upon Ar-Razaq or Khairul Raziqin. If you call upon Khairul Raziqin, Allah will provide you a thobe because you need a thobe, but it will be the most beautiful thobe ever. It will be the best thobe. Now He's providing what you need, but it's beautified and elaborated and perfected, and the goodness in it is made perfect. Right? This is what Khairul Raziqin does. He's still providing what you need, but He's giving it to you in the best form possible. Or like if you're really hungry, He will give you food, but it will be really good food that will be a pleasure to consume. This is Khairul Raziqin. It's not saying that, Khairul Raziqin isn't the person that isn't like whenever you're hungry, he will immediately and reliably provide the food. That is not what's being meant by Khairul Raziqin. Raziqin has that meaning in it of itself, right? So when we say the best of Raziqin, it's not the best here isn't implying the most reliable or the most dependable or the one who will ensure that you're never without risk. That's not what's being implied by khair. Khair is implying that what he provides is the best. When he provides for your need, it will be the best thing you need. Anyways, enough of that. Um, okay, second, we have the previous three dhikr of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin showing the kind of risk that is provided by Kheyr-ur-Raziqin and to what type of people, right? So we already have the precedence of the three usages in the Quran and what type of risk that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides as Kheyr-ur-Raziqin and to what type of people. So from the consistent precedence of that, in this fourth usage, we have a type of person that we're invited to be, someone who spends in the cause of Allah, but we don't have a specific idea of what we're going to be, what type of risk we're going to be extended. Right? Allah doesn't specify that. With Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's obvious, right? Even though Allah doesn't specify what type of risk Allah will provide for him, we know because it's Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's already like it's the best of the best of the best, the absolutely highest and most perfect risk possible, the most beautiful. That's for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? We just, that's implied here. It's similar that the type of risk, it doesn't say rizqun hasana. It doesn't say food, table of food from the heavens. It doesn't say the specific type of risk. But based upon the three previous usages, we can imply it is the best risk that Allah provides in this situation to those who spend in His cause anything. Third, the people who are being provided for here are those who spend, make infaq in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is equivalent to making jihad with your, not, with your wealth, not yourself, right? So so here we see that the people who are being provided for are the people who make infaq, and the people who have infaq have iman, and they usually have the best. The more infaq you give, or the more jihad you make with your wealth, the higher you are in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by the more you give, I mean the more proportionate to what you have, right? We don't mean more in absolute, but more in proportion to what you have. So the more you give, the better you're being provided for. Here are those who spend and make infaq in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so I can't check how long the recording has been, because whatever you check with this software, what happens is there's a big black box that appears in the middle, and then even if I move the software around, like here in the corner, it's like a big black splotch over like 30% of the screen in a long rectangle, and so it's really difficult um, it gets annoying. So I'm just going to do this last slide really quickly, or this last mention of Allah really quickly without checking time. But of course, you're free to do what you want. If you're studying this, you don't have to listen to the whole thing. You already have a good sense. But there's only 5 dhikrs, and so if you go through the last one, you'll have a perfect understanding of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. So the fifth dhikr of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in the Quran, Kheyr-ur-Raziqin provides for those who trust in Him and are not driven by scarcity. Surah Jummah is a short Jummah composed of 11 ayah. Kheyr-ur-Raziqin mentioned the final ayah of the surah. The final ayah of the surah Jummah is a single composition. The first of them, ayah 9, begins with a direct address to the Mominin, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. The second of them, ayah 10, begins with fa or so, conjoining its meaning to the meaning of ayah 9. And the third of them, ayah 11, begins with wa or and, conjoining its meaning to the meaning of ayah 10. So basically, in this little paragraph, I'm not going to go into detail. I'm giving you the conjunctions between the three ayah, which make it clear that the three ayah together form a single composition, and therefore there's a like each word in a sentence has meaning, and so each ayah in the composition has a meaning, but they're also joined into one conglomerate joint meaning. In the first and second ayah of the composition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "O you have believed, when the call is made for the prayer on the day of Jummah, then hasten to be remembered to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and leave trade. That is better for you if you only know. So when the salah concluded, disperse in the earth and seek from the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala much, so that you may succeed." In Ayah 62:11, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And when they saw a transaction and diversion, they rushed to it, and they left you standing. Say, what is with Allah is better than the diversion and from the transaction, and then the transaction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of providers, Kheyr-ur-Raziqin." But this is really the ayah we're interested in. This is kind of the preface, the two ayah that kind of compose uh, the with the third, the conglomerate meaning. But this is the ayah that mentions Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, and it's the last ayah of Surah Jummah. Let's examine the structure and meaning of the first and second ayah of the composition. First, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Mominin and commands them to hurry to the remembrance of Allah when the adhan is called and leave trade. Second, He informs them that the enacting this command is better for them than trade if they only knew. Third, as a consequence, He commands them that when Jummah is concluded, to disperse in the land and seek from the bounty of Allah. And finally, He commands them to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala much, so that they may succeed. These two ayah, which contain commands for the Mominin regarding the Jummah, also paint a picture of the Mominin society on the day of Jummah, and they emphasize the primacy of the dhikr of Allah over everything else. They also establish that there is an appropriate time for everything as worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala both commands to leave trade and rush to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when the adhan is called, and dispersion in the earth seeking the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once the salah is concluded. This command of both movements to the masjid and away from it show that both actions can be a form of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and indeed remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned in both the masjid going and masjid leaving ayah. Let me read this sentence again instead of commentating, because I have to get to Fajr at the Haram in like 30 minutes, so I have to read Sunnah and all that, so I'm trying to go quick. But I made this long video. I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a priority to finish. I will not compromise on the quality, but I also have shortness of time. So they also establish that there is an appropriate time for everything as worship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala both commands leave trade and rush to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when the adhan is called, and dispersion in the earth and seeking the bounty of Allah once salah is concluded. This command of both movements to the masjid and away from it showed that both actions can be a form of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned in both the masjid going and masjid leaving ayah. Thus, in the final ayah of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the specific moment in which the Sahaba fall short of this remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, prioritized above all else and present in every movement of life. So the dhikr of Allah can exist in every movement of life, both going to the masjid and away from it. Is not only ibadah to go to the masjid, it's also ibadah to leave the masjid and seek the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Both are dhikr of Allah, both movements and enactments in the ebb and both in the ebb and the flow of life, the remembrance of Allah can be a constant. So the end that, but they fall short of this. So there's a remembrancing of Allah, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're falling short of it in a particular moment. So the end that initiates this ayah conjoins the meaning of to the prior ayat, and there's a conceptual parallel in which the Sahaba behave in a manner directly opposite to that which is outlined, or the image which is outlined in the previous two ayah. There is no likin or but conjoining the ayah with the previous. This would make the contrast very blunt and obvious. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows the contrast in a more subtle way, almost like a gentle sigh. I wish I had more time to go into the language because it's really beautiful. I'll do a different video on that. These particular Sahaba who are with the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam see the opportunity for a profitable transaction and an opportunity for some diversion, and they rush off, leaving Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam standing. This behavior is in contrast to the spirit that is cultivated by the ayah prior to this. There's a proper time and place for everything, and in that proper time and place, that action is actually worship. And metaphor is assumed in relationship to, so for example, if they had gone and traded when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wasn't there with them, or at least they hadn't rushed off in that way, it's actually ibadah to seek the fadl of Allah so you can provide for your family, or so that Allah provides for your family through you, and you're seeking of the fadl. He makes that a sabab of delivering the fadl. So, a metaphor is assumed in relationship to the meaning of the prior two ayah. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is like the adhan for Jummah. When he is present and making himself available to the Sahaba are to rush to him, leaving all else. But they actually do the opposite. They disperse from him, valuing the transaction and diversion. It's like them going to the market when it's time for Salah, and then trying to go to the masjid after Salah is qaza, or after Jamaat is over. So the timing is off. But they actually do the opposite. They disperse away from valuing the transaction and diversion. This behavior manifests where their heart was in that moment what they valued and what they were prioritizing. So because they're doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, it shows that their heart is not full of dhikr. When your heart has dhikr, you do the right thing at the right time. Notice this composition of the three ayah begins with the Ya alladina amasnu. So no one is questioning the iman of the Sahaba, even those Sahaba who rushed off. However, leaving Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam standing, However, this moment of ghaflat falls short of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicated in the previous two ayah. And I've had this behavior myself, like in the haram, sometimes they have kajur, always they have kajur, right? And they have good kajur as iftar, right? And so what happens, sometimes people, they start serving after asr, and sometimes people eat so much between asr and maghrib, there's very little left for if actual iftar at maghrib time. And so I've had this case where like I had intention for roza and I was fasting since Fajr and I had been up since Fajr and I'm in the haram, and all of a sudden I just rush toward the kajur and I eat it because I see that everyone's eating all the kajur, and I have the intention of opening iftar there, and it's like almost like I can't bear the reality that I've come for iftar, and these people are eating all the kajur and I won't have kajur when I actually open the iftar and I actually have roza. So I'm eating sometimes the animal takes over. We're human beings, this type of thing can happen. But this is so I'm not calling the sahaba bad. I'm being open that, like, this type of thing happens to me too. We can have these type of instinctual kind of seeking of that which we value on an animal level. And it's most likely that these were lower ranking sahaba. Not necessarily, but it's possible if you use the word in that in the prevalent usage. After all, the Sahaba were those who valued and sought out the soba of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam no matter what price. These Sahaba were with him when this moment of ghafla valued and rushed off to something else, and it's possible that they were not Sahaba at all. So here, it doesn't explicate that these people were Sahaba in the proper sense, like it talks about Abu Bakr. The Quran says Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was a Sahaba, so it's not saying this about these people, but obviously they were seeking the soba of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or they had the soba of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and they rushed off. So we don't know exactly who these people are. We do probably in Shan and Azul, but I'm not talking from that source right now, just in the Quran. Or perhaps may have been from the Munafiqun. That's possible. This from the text alone. The detail is something that is better determined by Shan and Azul and locating hadith that clarify that, or sirah that clarify the identity of those who rushed off, which is not the methodology we're employing here at the moment. But to return to our main topic, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends the final ayah by saying that what is with him is better than what they rushed off to get, and in that which is with Allah for the believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is better for the believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is manifest. So here we see that Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is manifest in the risk that is with him for the faithful. Again, this risk of perfect goodness and absolute beauty. This is the risk that Allah has with him and is better for the Mominin than what those people rushed off for. Secondly, the use of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin is meant to remind the Sahaba who rushed off or the Munafiqin who rushed off. We don't know. I'm not equating those two, but I'm saying just from the text, there's a possibility it was either category, but those two categories are completely different. Okay, rush off that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, so that they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seek the risk from him and seek the rizqun hasana, the absolutely better than anything else risk from him. If they were fully in touch with this reality, they would not have rushed off, leaving the Prophet standing. So Allah is reminding them of this reality. He's making this reality known to them again, so that they don't behave as long if they have this dhikr of Allah's Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in their heart, then that behavior wouldn't have happened. If in that masjid, in that moment, I had the ilm of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin, I had the remembrance of Kheyr-ur-Raziqin in my heart, then the som would have been better for me than the khajur, and I would have preferred what Allah would have provided for me as someone who was fasting rather than what the khajur represented for me. So this is, if you remember that while you're in ibadah, or while you're in remembrance, or while you're with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while in the salah, you won't prioritize something else that's lesser than that over that. This behavior is obviously motivated by the scarcity rather than trust in Kheyr-ur-Raziqin. Okay, so that's the whole video. Alhamdulillah, this is beautiful. It was a good review. I need to edit some things that I saw in here, but Alhamdulillah, it was good. I don't have a long time to do a long output or a long outro. Please like, subscribe, comment below. You can comment, you can access me at sayyidhassanali@gmail.com, and also please make infaq to continue this dawah, to promote this dawah. Please visit the website ilmulhasma.com. We're gonna have an email list up soon. If it's already up when you go, please put your email in there. Help us out. Please make infaq. Infaq is such an important thing. You see how Allah talks about it in this name specifically. please make infaq, support the dawah, and also I'm a sayyid, I'm an imam. I don't Imam means priest. Actually, ahadul imamat, covenant of priesthood. So I'm from a priestly lineage, the way the Cohens were in Shariat, the Musa from Harun al-Islam. I'm from Sayyidina Ali al-Islam, and obviously from Sayyidina Fatima and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm a Sayyid. So please, uh, if you want to provide khums or hadiah to support, because I don't take anything from the infaq for my personal usage. Infaq is for the website, maintenance, building the dawah, hiring people, other things like that. Maybe I take a little zaruriyat from it if I need, but I don't like doing that. My needs, I'm devoted to this work full time, to the Quran, learning and teaching it full time, and I don't want to take money in exchange for teaching the Quran. I just want to teach the Quran, but that requires that for my marriage, for my zuriyat, for my body, my needs, my my human need, my bashariyat, my zaruriyat are fulfilled through hadiah or through khums, right? So if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to provide that, please contact me or just email me. There'll be a form up soon in which you can do that directly on Patreon or some other platform. You can also PayPal me at mcapmindset@gmail.com. But that was an old life, old thing, so I don't want to involve that too much. I'll soon have one set up for Sayyid Hassan Ali at gmail.com. But just please contact me. Please support us financially if you can. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.